Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to another use case video on flows, and this is record triggered flows use case 2. I believe we have watched the previous use case, which was our very first use case around record triggered flows, and this is the second one that we'll be trying to attempt. Let's take a look at the question. It says when a lead status is updated to ready for closure, automatically create an account, a contact, and an opportunity. Right. So as we do it for every particular problem that we have in hand, we try to decode what's needed and then we start building the solution. Right. So here, what is your object that would trigger the flow? Right, it's the lead object, right? And what is the event? Is it an insert event or an update event or a delete event or maybe an insert and update both? It's the update event, right? So whenever the lead status is updated to a certain value, right? And you also have a flag to track whether the status has been updated to a specific value. Only then this particular action should happen, right? So let's go ahead and try building this in our org. So I can go ahead and say new flow. And this would be our second record triggered flow. I'll just choose the record triggered flow option here. The very first thing I need to tell the system is that the object should be lead, and every time the record is updated is when I want this flow to trigger, right? And then do I have any entry conditions? The entry condition is that the stage should be updated to ready for closure. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and put a entry condition here. But let's not do that here in this particular use case, because not always would you want to put a entry condition here, because then that would mean that this flow will run only for this scenario. But what if you had 10 other scenarios that you wanted to execute? Would you create 10 different flows? No. Ideally, you should try to bifurcate your existing flow into as many branches as you can, each branch signifying a specific module or a criteria or a business logic, right? So let's leave the entry conditions empty and we'll put a decision node here. That's how we'll try to figure out whether the stage has been updated or not. Okay, so that has its own pros and cons, but I'm just showing you another way of how to take a look at whether a filter criteria has been met or not and take actions accordingly. Okay, and then down below, do you want to do any fast field updates or do you want to do some actions and related records? What do you say? What we want to do as part of this use case is we want to create an account, a contact, and an opportunity, which means I want to create some related records. It's nothing on the lead record that I want to update, which is why I'll not be choosing the fast field updates and I'll go with the actions and related records option. All right, let's go ahead and click on the save button. The first of all, let's say record triggered flows use case 2, create related records on lead closure. All right, let's also create the stage field on the lead object because I don't believe we have this yet. It's called ready for closure, right? Let's create this lead status because we have an automatic conversion on the converted flag, but let's create an intermediate stage for our usage. Let's switch to classic. So I'm switching to classic because I have this Safari browser that prompts me to switch to classic because of some runtime compatibility issue. So I'll just be on classic here. Let's go to setup. Let's say leads, fields, and there should be a status field, right? So under status, let's go ahead and click on the new button here. And let's just say ready for closure. This is our flag that once updated, we want to trigger some sort of records, account, contact, and opportunity. So I have the flag available here. And then let's now go back to our flows. This is currently not being activated. Why? Because we don't have any node connected here. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to add a decision node. This is where you see a decision node pretty much similar to screen flows. I want to check, is lead status changed to ready for closure? This is what we want to test, right? And when this happens is only when we want to trigger the record creation. So this is where I want to say, yes, it is changed is one of the outcomes, and the default outcome would basically be, no, it is not changed. I can change the default outcome name. I can do that, see? Now here, what should be my condition? My condition should take a look at the current record, right? So the current record is this particular variable here, not this one. This is basically the prior record, the one that is the previous record, the old record, the older version, which will be updated to the newer version. So as soon as we hit the save button, this is the variable that contains the new information. So record dot status should be equal to ready for closure. I don't see the value here, but let me just choose one value. Let's say done, and let's just save it for now. All right, so that I can refresh it. Now I'll just go ahead and refresh, and that new value should start showing up. Okay, so this is the node that has been created. Let's click on the edit element here, and here the status should be ready for closure, this value right here. Okay, so the status is equal to ready for closure, and here what I want to do is I want to say only if the record that triggered the flow to run is updated to meet the condition requirements is when I want to execute this outcome. Now what does this big long line mean? It means that only when the status is equal to ready for closure, or rather only when the record has been updated that led to the status being changed to ready for closure is when I want to execute this node. Which node? This node right here. This will only be executed whenever the lead status is changed to ready for closure. Is there another way to do it? Yes. What is that other way that we learned in the previous use case? Using the isChanged method. So if you say isChanged and you simply say true, and it is changed to what value, you also have to specify that, right? So it is changed to the ready for closure value. Right, if you do this, you see you don't have to choose the execute outcomes because it automatically is tracking whether it is changed or not. Only then it will run, or else it will not run. All right, so be mindful of the ways that you want to implement it. Sometimes some scenarios work and some do not, so it depends on what is your use case and whether the update is happening properly or not, right? And depends when the flow is getting executed. Okay, that's one more way. What is the third way to do this? The third way to do this is you can say that the record status does not equal to the prior record status. Correct? What does this mean? This means that the old value of the status, the old status is not equal to the new status. Does that imply that the status has changed? Yes, the status has changed, right? And then you can say, is the new status ready for closure? So these are the three ways you can basically track this. And then you can say only if the record that triggered the flow is updated to meet the condition requirements, which means this will only create the records once. It will not enter this node every time the record matches the criteria. Similar to how you had it on the workflows, right? Subsequently meet criteria. Same thing was also on the process builders. Okay, so I'll just try with this for now. I'll just try to use the record prior variable and the record status variable. I believe you understand this, that the current status is not equal to the previous status, and the current status is ready for closure is when I want to execute some of the actions. All right, let's click on the save button. Right, it currently says that there's a warning. I'm not sure why is this. It says that you cannot reference record prior in a flow rule condition when does require is true. So have we set it to true? Let's see. Yeah, let's just leave it to if the conditions requirements are met. Why? Because we are anyway checking the old state and the new state, right? Which again means the same thing, that I'm checking whether status has changed or not. Is changed equal to true or not? Just another way of doing it. All right. So it's giving me a warning. So let's just choose the if condition requirements are met and say done. And let's save it now. Let's see if the warning shows up. The warning has gone away. All right. So the warning is not here anymore, and now we are good to add any kind of actions here that pertain to the decision node here. Okay, now what do we want to do? We want to create an account, we want to create a contact, and want to create an opportunity. Okay, so what I'll do is, just for the sake of the use case, I will simply create 3 records. So we'll use the create records element. So I'm just typing it out. Whenever you want to use any element, you can either type it out or you can just scroll and you can check all the elements available, and then you can come down to the relevant one. Okay, the first thing I want to create is account record. All right, how many records do I want to create? I want to create 1 record. And how do you want to set the record fields, right? So here is where you'd probably want to use a record variable like we discussed in the ScreenFlow use cases, right? But if we want to assign individual literal values, we can simply choose the object, which is what we'll be doing here. So I'll say account. Now the name should basically be the name from the lead. So I'll choose the record dot lead ID. All right, let's take the lead ID as the name. What else? I need the rating, right? So the rating can be set to hot. All right, I'll just choose the value. What else? We need a website. Let's leave the website. That's okay. All right. Is there anything that I can store apart from these two? I think only the name is the required field, right? Name and rating, I believe. So we can just leave it to that. I'll say save. So this essentially should create a account record. Now, once the account record is created, I'll just close this flag. What the flow provides us is a record ID variable or the inserted ID variable from the account. So what if you want to leverage or use the account that's just been created? How can you do that? Yes, you can have a variable that's available. Let me show you. So what is the next thing we want to do? We want to create a contact, right? So I'll say create records. I'll say create contact under the lead. All right, I want to create one record. I want to use separate resources. I want to choose the contact object, and this is where I want to put the name, where first name equals record dot lead ID, right? I can just use some variable. I'm not sure which one, but for now, just for the sake of the use case, I'm just choosing the record ID, all right? Because I don't have unique identifiers here for first name, last name. And for a contact, the last name is mandatory, right? So let's just populate the last name for now. Okay, and then I also want to, let's say, associate the contact to the account that is just created. So how do I do that? I have the account ID field here on the contact, but how do I associate it? I associate it by typing the create account record for the lead, right? This account ID. This is the variable that Salesforce Flow automatically gives you whenever a DML operation happens for an insertion, right? So if you want to fetch, or if you want to take, or if you want to look into the record ID that's just created, the record ID that would be present here, the account ID from this particular node. Create account record for the lead. This is the same node, right? So we'll choose this account ID. And what this will essentially do is associate the account to the contact that we are creating. All right, let's click on the save button. There's a second record that we wanted to create. What's the third one? The third one is create an opportunity. So I'll again say create records, and I'll say create opportunity. All right, here I'll use separate resources. This time the object will be opportunity. And here I think I'll probably need, let's see, the name. The name would be lead.id again. And then the close date is something that's mandatory, right? So if I wanted to give today's date, how do you give today's date? You have something that's called flow, and then you have the current date. So flow is again a global action variable, which global action that has a lot of variables inside it, right? So current date time. You saw the fault message, right? That was part of the flow variable. So similar to how you have global constants, you have the flow variable, the dollar flow variable. Okay, so this is basically the current date. Name and close date is something that I've populated. All right, let's click on the save button. All right, are we good? Let's click on the debug button. Let's check whether we are good or not. So I'll just choose a lead. I'll say Bertha Boxer, and what I'll do is I'll just update the lead to I'll update the lead status to ready for closure. That is our trigger point, right? Let's see whether that works or not. So where is our status? Let's see. Status is working contacted. I'll just move it to ready for closure, and I'll say run. Okay, so it says that the lead status changed to ready for closure. It did not change according to this. Why is so? So ready for closure is not equal to the prior status, right? And then record.status ready for closure equals null. Why does it check equals null? Let's see. This should be this text here, right? The new record status should be equal to ready for closure is what I've typed in here, right? So why is it taking it as null? Let's see. Ready for closure. Let's say done. Let's save it again. Let's debug again. Bertha Boxer, and then you have the status here as working contacted. I'm just moving it to ready for closure. Let's say run. Yeah, so it's going to the right node now. Probably there was a text mapping issue, but we set the field properly. Now, if you notice, the flow has successfully reached the two nodes that we created. It was able to create an account. If you notice, see 001, an account got created, and then it was also able to create a contact, and that contact also had an account association. All good until then, and that's where we found an error that opportunity was supposed to be created, but a required field was missing. So you see, you have everything present here in the debug mode that ensures that your flows do not fail on the live environment. So before even activating or even trying it out with real data, debug mode is the best place to check what is going wrong and check all the scenarios and use cases. All right. So now what we notice is that the stage name is missing, which is a mandatory field. Okay. So I could simply just go ahead here and I could just put a stage name value, right? I could do that. But what I want to do here is I want to show you that you can also add fault paths here. Okay, you can add fault paths here, and I also wanted to show you that you can show, or you can rather throw custom errors to the user on the screen. Okay, so if I were to leave this as is, and if I just activate this, this flow will certainly fail, right? So if I just go ahead and activate it, let's see what happens. Okay, now let's go to a lead record, Bertha Boxer. Let's go to lead. Right, let's go to Bertha Boxer and let's change the status to ready for closure, and let's mark this as current status. Okay, so if you notice that record triggered flows to create related records has failed miserably, and it has given that error saying required fields are missing, right? So that error popped up on the screen. Now, is there a better way to handle it? Yes, there is, right? So you have something that's called a custom error. This is part of the interaction. Okay, and custom error shows up either on a field or on the window. All right, and what you can do or you can choose to do is, if one of your database insertions updates failed, you can choose to throw a custom error message, pretty much something that's more user readable, right? That's the idea. So throw error on failure. Okay, that's the name of the label, and what I want to do is I want to keep it on the window, and this is where I want to put the error message, right? Let's just put one error message here, and I'll simply say looks like record creation failed from your flow RT flows 2. Please review the same. Okay, this is the user readable message that I can put, and if I want I can also choose to add any variables that are available to me. All right, the fault message, or maybe the current date, time, what specific time it failed, or any kind of messages that we have. All right, so we can add them. Okay, I'll leave it plain and simple for now, and I'll just simply say save. Okay, now what this will do is this will follow this flow and this will throw the error because I've not put a decision node here, right? Let's take a look. Let's activate this. Let's come back to Bertha Boxer and let's now mark as current status. Okay, so if you notice this is not showing up, let's refresh our page. Ready for closure, let's mark as current status. So it's giving us the plain error as of now. What I want to do is let's try adding a fault path, and let's now move this element from here and let's add it here, right? So if anything goes wrong with the opportunity creation is only when I want this to be thrown. Let's see if this works. All right, let's say save, let's say activate, and let's come back here. Let's refresh our page and let's say ready for closure, mark as current status. And now if you notice, it says looks like record creation failed from your flow. Please review the same. So if you notice, the message is a bit more neat, a bit more user readable, and helps you understand what the error is, right? So the combination of using a fault path the reason why it was failing and not showing us the message is because it was failing on this node itself, and it was taking the fault path, which was pretty much not defined by us. So what I essentially did is I added a fault path and I put this custom error screen here. Now understand what this capability helps you do. Do you know what validation rules are? Do you remember creating validation rules? Right? Now you can choose to put validation rules via flows as well. This is what it means. You can throw an error on a screen without having to write a validation rule and without having to write a custom trigger. Essentially, this is all about removing the trigger.add error code that you write in triggers to handle scenarios. Correct? So anything that fails, the trigger has to throw an error, right? If it fails on the trigger. Similar functionality has now been enabled on flows. So you can throw custom errors from the flow if something goes wrong behind the scenes. So the user did not do anything. All they did was just change the status, right? But something behind the scenes was starting to work and catch up, but failed. And and the flow was smart enough to throw the error to the user on the record level, saying this is what happened on this particular flow. Please review the same. Right now, this helps in debugging. This helps easily to find where the issue was. So custom errors are very important in terms of handling errors, right? So the combination of fault path and adding a custom error becomes a very lethal combination, a very lethal weapon for you to handle a lot of scenarios and to make life of business easy, and then obviously developers life easy, right? Because the error messages otherwise are very generic and you have to take a lot of time to debug things and figure out what went wrong and where, and it takes a lot of time, right? So every DML statement or any kind of actions that might fail can be put under a fault path, right? And you can even have one fault path for each DML statement. What if the account creation failed, right? Choose to add a fault path here and then add a message so that even within a flow, you'll be able to know that this thing failed here. It did not fail here. So that's the kind of granularity that you get when you put fault path and custom errors, right? So that's pretty much error handling that we can do on record triggered flows as well. What we had on screen flows was fault path, and we could use a screen to show the fault message, right? But here we do not have a screen to show to the user, which is why you get the custom error option. All right. And the beauty of this is you can also choose to show the error on a specific field, right? So you can choose which field to show the error on, right? So we can even choose what field is the problem and we can just choose that field. All right. Cool. Let's just resolve this. Let's just leave this as is, and I'll just go ahead and put the stage name here. So the stage name would be the very first stage, I believe. Let's see what do we have in hand. I'll just put it in qualification. Let's now save it, and this time it should not even go to the error, and it should successfully run. Right? So I've just activated it. Let's refresh our page here. And this time, fingers crossed, we have Bertha Boxer as the lead. We'll simply say ready for closure and mark as current status. Right? So if you notice, we did not get an error and the status has successfully moved to ready for closure. But if we were to take a look at the account, you see that one account has been created with a record ID name, and this is the one that we created, right? So this is the record ID that has been set, and I believe the rating is set to hot, right? See, the rating is set to hot. Does it have a related contact to it? Let's take a look. If we go to contacts, there should be a contact created, right? So if you see, there's a contact created and it is associated to the account record, this record right here. All right. And then do you also have an opportunity? That's the next question. Let's take a look at the opportunity. So you have an opportunity created and it is on the stage qualification, the stage that we set with the close date, which is today's date. All right, so you have been successfully able to create three different records from the flow by just creating three nodes, and you have also been able to handle error errors, basically error handling, and you have also been able to do it on a specific entry criteria, taking a decision. So a total of 5 nodes is what you have written. It took you about 15 to 20 minutes. If you know this, it will take you about 15 to 20 minutes, and you have been able to solve a lead conversion problem custom without writing code, just by automation. So if Salesforce does not give this facility to convert a lead, and if you have to go custom and handle certain scenarios, you can use flows and you can simply build this one, right? Saves a lot of time, saves a lot of coding, ensures that things are streamlined, and also saves a lot of time for the developer, and something that's good, right? Efficient, and it's very manageable and maintainable, right? You can come back later and you can understand what you did and you can upgrade it if you need, and you have the version control, you have the last modified information, everything is here. And the best part is you can even debug, right? So you can see if you have three nodes here, you can just try to figure out how to modify the record or update the record so that the result goes to this particular node or that node. All of that can be done on the debug mode. That's how powerful flows are, right? And it will keep on getting powerful from here, right? That's the reason why we are doing this masterclass. All right, great. That's all about this use case. I believe I took up the challenge myself, but if you took up the challenge yourself, that's great. But if you did not, I hope we all learned something new. So that's great. Ensure user receives an error message if anything goes wrong during the conversion. So we showed the user the error message because the opportunity failed, right? So we did that. Awesome. So that was all about use case 2. Feel free to comment below any use cases that you want me to solve from your side, any question, any specific use case that you have trouble with or you might have encountered in your real time scenarios or real life scenarios. I'll try to make a video around it. I have my own use cases set up, so I'll be recording them for sure, but comment below if you have anything specific in mind. All right, cool. That's all for this use case. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.